the book of Ephesians chapter 6, we have this great encouragement, a wonderful reminder. It says, finally, be strong in the Lord and in his mighty power, so that you can take your stand against the devil's schemes. Now, there's a couple of quick things I want to point out there. It says, okay, be strong in the Lord and in his mighty power. It's important to remember that our strength comes from him, that it's his power that we rely on. But even more important, it might be to know that you have access to his power. See, I think a lot of times we feel so powerless in this world that we just kind of resign ourselves to not making our stand at all. We think that, sin is an inevitable reality. That, it's kind of my job to sin and kind of God's job to forgive me. And he's really good at his job, so I guess I'll be really good at mine. That's terrible thinking. You see, God gives us power to take our stand against the devil's schemes. And so it's really foolish when we don't access his power, when we don't rely on his power, and when we don't make our stand against the devil's schemes. Now, I like that word scheme. It's kind of a cool word. We don't use it a whole lot in our language today. I grew up using it, though. Being a football player and the son of a football coach, we studied game film. And when we were looking at game film, we were looking at the other team's schemes. We were looking at how they would block on a certain play and what their tendencies were. They had a game plan. What was their scheme? And then we would come up with a game plan to defeat that particular scheme. And so when it comes to the devil's schemes, I think there's three primary ways that he comes at us. The first way is that he wants to convince us that we don't matter. And so there's always this kind of thought that I think the devil's throwing at us saying, hey, you know what? You don't really matter. You got more important issues. You've got more pressing concerns than really thinking about God's kingdom and what he's got going on. And you know what? If you just sit this one out, God will do it without you. The problem with that is that you are God's workmanship, created in Christ Jesus to do good works, which he's prepared in advance for you to do. So if I don't do the works he's prepared for me to do, or you don't do the works that he's prepared for you to do, they go undone. And so the devil just wants to say, hey, you know what? You don't matter. Sit this one out. It'll happen on its own. No, it won't. There's good works that God's prepared for you and for me to do. And if we don't do them, they go undone. The second thing that the devil wants to do is he wants to control us with sin. He wants to grab a hold of us and control us with sin. And so what we'll do is we'll start to accept, a little sin in our lives and say, well, it's not a big deal because it's not like, that big sin over there. And so we fall into this trap of comparison. And we wind up being controlled by it because then we've got to maintain that sin. We've got to keep a lid on that sin. We've always got to find somebody who we believe is worse than us to compare ourselves against. And man, it takes a lot of energy to keep on sinning when you've been set apart and made holy by God. It takes a lot of energy to live that way. And so we very much are controlled by that sin. And then the third thing that the devil tries to do is he tries to contain us with stagnation, to kind of convince us, you know what, you're fine. You've arrived. You know what, you're saved. Great. You know what? He can't unsave you. God's done that. That's not his goal. His goal is not to get you to come and worship him. He just wants you out of the game. Just out of the game. And so stagnation, to say, you know what, this spiritual growth thing's tough. This pursuing God thing is tough. This following after Jesus thing is tough. I think I'm just going to sit right here, kick back my heels, and wait for death. That's no good. God has plans for you. He has plans to use you to advance his kingdom. And you know what? There's a whole lot of our ones who are counting on you. So let's make our stand against the devil's schemes. Let's rely on the Lord and in his mighty power. And let's make our stand together. Let's go, church.